Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Monkey Week, to our professional conference. Today is kind of a mix between what we do in the mornings, which is more technical and professional, and what we do in the evenings, which is more talking to people we admire. And in this case, we admire Laetitia Sadier a lot. Everyone in the team is a big fan of everything you've done, and we will go through it later, but not only Stereolab, but everything else as well. And well, first, welcome, Laetitia. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming to Sevilla virtually. How are you today?
Well, thank you. Doing well.
So this is going to be an interview that ideally we want to know more about you and your process and but also your history. So I would, as a fan, I would like to know what is your background? What is your first musical memory? When did you decide that you wanted to be a musician, if you did?
I know I've always been sensitive to the musical form. There was something magical about it, really from a very young age. Apparently, in my mother's womb, I would already dance when there was music around. I would react to music, so maybe it's an indicator. Music really, I felt quite lonely as a child, though I had 3 sisters. I felt quite isolated in my slot there, and music was a divine thing. I don't know, it seemed like it would come from heaven and speak to me and hold me dear company. So I had already a very special relationship as a child with music, and there wasn't a lot around. It wasn't like my parents had a ton of records, and and we would. It would happen through the radio or somewhere. And we lived in America, where the musical culture was you had some radio who played incessant flow of music, like from the 60s or the 70s. Or so yeah, easy music was more accessible in America, like on tap, on radio.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, when I was 11, someone asked me, "So what do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "I want a record." What of? It's like, I don't know. I just want a record. I didn't know what, but.
And do you remember which one that was?
Well, okay. So with my little pocket money, we went to the record shop in America, and I bought the first thing that was there on the till, which was Billy Joel. It's still rock and roll to me, and I did not know what I was buying. It was potluck and bad luck in this instance. But then at the time, the Eagles were massive in America, so someone gave me a Eagles record, which I totally ignored, I must say. But also, I got for my birthday, I got a Linda Ronstadt record. And that I remember listening to pretty actively. And also before we left, this was in 1977 or 78, my dad had Jean-Michel Jarre, Oxygène. And that made a strong impact on me. So
that's starting to make more sense. I was thinking, I did not know about America, so it was like, you're so European, and it was like if your first musical memories were American, it felt like, wow, that was a surprise. It came as a surprise.
That's where I bought my first record, but I remember what really there were 2 hits in America. One was Wings. Don't Say It. And I loved that song. When it would come on, it's like, the world would stop. Bathed in the music. And the other one that had exactly the same effect was Blondie's Heart of Glass.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, really divine and magical tune to have come through the air somehow.
And when did you start thinking that you would want to be on stage?
I always liked being on stage. You know, like in your school, you do a little play or a little
Mm-hmm.
dance at the end on stage. So I always felt comfortable on a stage, also as a child.
And you also have a very you are very keen not only on the music side but also on the words and the lyrics and the I would say intellectual side of the music. Uh, did you read a lot since you were a child as well?
No, I'm very dyslexic, and reading is difficult. Like devouring books, I don't devour books. I plod through books, which is well, that's how it is. But so I listen to the radio a lot, and that's kind of my main source of nourishment, of intellectual nourishment. But I did read a few books.
Of course.
And,
do you listen to a lot of podcasts nowadays?
Yeah, and although I've not done it, but I know audiobooks are great and work for a lot of people. But I've not delved into. There's so much to listen to. You know, already when I turn on France Culture, they're already saying something of interest that is expanding my mind. So then there's all the podcasts that are on France Culture that, I want to listen to that. I want to listen to that, you know. And then there's all the movies on Mubi, which I'm like, I need to see that, So, and of course, there's only so many hours in the day, you know, that you also need to exist, like be. And or exercise. But there's one book in particular that was, I think, very foundational for me and for my intellectual outlook. Although I was always quite politicized, it's a guy, a philosopher who worked. He was also an economist and a psychoanalyst, actually. And he was married to a famous psychoanalyst woman, and they looked at society, you know, because I think there is a kind of idea in psychoanalysis or psychotherapy that, you know, everything stems from your parents, and all your neuroses or psychosis, whatever, you know, derive from your relationship as a child with your parents, your almighty parents. And they thought, well, yeah, this is fine, but also society shapes you and is going to fuck you around greatly. And they try to look into the impact of society on the human psyche as an individual, and of course as a society. And that is, to me, makes perfect sense. But it doesn't seem that out there it's relegated. The idea is commonly and widely spread, you know. So anyway, he wrote a book called The Imaginary Institution of Society. And it's quite a big book and it's quite hard to read. But whatever I did get from this book I felt was quite fundamental in my thinking. And that's where I get the name monad from. He was talking about the monads, and
that is Castoriadis.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you know him? You know Casto?
I know him because of you, actually. That's one of the things I wanted to touch during this conversation with you, is how you, together with your bandmates in the different projects, helped shape the education of a generation in a way. I don't know if, let's go step by step. We were talking about your political awareness. When you decided to be political in the lyrics, in your music, was that an aesthetic decision, or was a conscious decision to open minds and to let people know about things they may not know about?
Well, what happened is that when I moved to London with Tim, well, Tim was already in London, and he was in a band called McCarthy, which some of you may remember. And McCarthy were pretty radical left-wing,
very much,
revolutionary communist party type of left-wing, and also very intellectual. Michael was very intellectual. He'd read all Karl Marx and well, everything around.
This may sound like gossip, but who was the radical person in McCarthy, Tim or Malcolm Eden?
Oh, Malcolm was Tim was more of an anarchist than he was a communist revolutionary, and I must say I oscillate between the two, because I see a lot of good principles in anarchism, which I think is more of an ideal form of being, because everyone's responsible. But I tend to think that also, well, we need some kind of central government, but I don't know. It's a big other discussion, and hopefully one day we will get there. We will have to make those decisions. So how do we organize society so that it best functions for the majority of the people? And I feel we're still a bit far from. No, we're right in the middle of those questions now, of course, and we have been for centuries maybe, and but I feel we're coming closer to the day where we really seriously have to ask ourselves those questions and act upon them, But most definitely Malcolm was the revolutionary communist. And
did you ever think that talking about these serious issues in a pop band could sound frivolous, or what was your approach or the feedback you got?
Well, I found that very, very attractive actually in McCarthy. That the melodies were brilliant and very haunting. The songs were exciting. There was an energy about them. They were urgent, and they were, that they were quite transformative, and captivating. And there was also stuff that made you think about your environments, and I thought, wow, this is great. It hits all categories, of what it is to be human, and to be to arrive on this planet, and to have to organize with other people. So I thought it was. I thought that was a strong aspect of, that not only was it exciting musically, but also it was purposeful. It's, it felt like, this is talking to me about my life and about our life. And that's how, to me, you see, music had something of that nature, that it was vital to me. It wasn't just like a frivolous thing in the background that you have, Mm-hmm. It was, I always say, a matter of life or death, very, very important, certainly. So, And I guess it's the case of, you know, a lot of musicians or people who listen to music very actively, probably you know, it's not, music's not just some accessory in your life, it's a big part.
It is our life. I think anyone who's as involved as we are, couldn't imagine life without it.
Yeah.
So let's go back in time again.
But I want to finish about the lyrics, and what happened is that, so Malcolm was writing those lyrics, which were mostly ironic, like, you know, the titles such as Anti-American Cretin,
mm-hmm.
you know, and some people would say, wouldn't get it. You go, oh, yeah, you're right, Americans are assholes or whatever. So whatever. But he said to me that, you know, there was this song also, Boy Meets Girl, so what? You know, and for him it's like, no, life's too short to write silly love songs, mindless stuff. You know, what you write has to have some political content, because, you know, that's what's the most important. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. So I guess, you know, he sent me off into my duties as a lyricist, you know, which were imposed on me, actually. You know, I only wrote lyrics because, you know, Tim didn't want to write them. So I was like a bit of an improvised lyricist, but it's fine. I felt I had things to say, and I said them, you know. So, but yeah, I guess there was this kind of censorship from Malcolm Eden to write silly love songs, but which, you know, a lot of the songs I wrote also are about love. So because I think that's a very almighty power.
I think it's very political in a sense.
Yeah.
The distinction between love and hate is the basics of what we can think what's good and evil in the world. And if you want to transmit and spread love, that's a very political kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would say it's the difference between love and fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more than hate. Do you think that people are essentially good, and when they are bad, it's because they are afraid?
Probably, yeah. Probably, yeah.
So let's go back to when you said you moved to London and you sing backing vocals in the last McCarthy album, and then you start Stereolab. How is that transition? How did that happen? Well, when did you decide to form Stereolab, and what was in your mind as was it an evolution from McCarthy, or was something that you thought, let's do something very different?
I think Tim wanted to have the full control over the music, and in McCarthy he only had so much control, and I think he, you know, sometimes some songs would come out not like what really he wanted. So you know, and then I arrived in his life, and I wanted to do music, and I wanted to sing, and so I think it was a quite natural transition. I mean, McCarthy were also at a turning point where it was like, okay, well, you know, next thing we do now is like tour the US. You know, they were acquiring some kind of notoriety in the underground world, and but yeah, history was different, and pretty much soon after the last album was released, there was a short tour with the Chills, which I joined as well, and I guess, you know, it was quite an obvious thing that it wouldn't work out in this form, that we had to break out and do our own thing, which is what happened.
And you start Stereolab, that, as I mentioned, for a lot of people discovered new things, both in politics, as I said, like you were talking about Marxism and you were talking about situationism, but also in styles of music that may not have been in fashion at that moment, and that you kind of brought back, like easy listening or kraut-rock, or I wonder if the different styles that you put into your music were just the music you were listening to at that time, and then you naturally it came into that, or if it was something more cerebral, and like you had an idea and you wanted to do that cocktail of different music to sound unique, which is what you did.
I mean, Tim definitely is an interesting mixture of cerebral and intuitive and very creative, certainly. But and he's very radical in his views about music, and you know, the hierarchy of higher and lower art and all that. And you know, to him, like elevator music can have, you know, has as much value as, you know, high classical,
mm-hmm. Like symphony
and experimental music. Like, I mean, I can't speak for him, unfortunately, and I know he has very interesting and very radical points of view about these things, and which I don't feel comfortable to translate.
Yeah, of course. And I don't want to ask any questions that are not addressed to you personally. I didn't know exactly your involvement in the music. You wrote the lyrics, but maybe you don't want to talk about the music itself or how it was done.
The thing is that I can't really, and it's true, I was very excluded from the musical. That's why I started my own bands.
Makes sense.
And that's just another thing. That's how it was, you know. But certainly, I know really Tim came from a radically different avenue into music that was very new. I'd never come across anyone like that, and I think he's quite unique in his approach to music and creativity. And but the thing is, we never had those discussions with Tim. So I don't know. You know, I would have to read some of his interviews and find out.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that's what he was thinking about. Yeah. But usually they were quite simple ideas, you know, like to the idea of Marjorie Eclipse to have an album on one speaker, a different album on the other speaker, and a third one on both speakers. You know, I mean, it's quite simple. It's quite, wow, how cool. You know, you get 3 albums in one. And it's a triple album or something.
And but what about your vocal lines and the distinctive way where you intertwine the vocals with Mary, which was also very a big part of the charm of the melodic side of Stereolab. Did you have an input on that, or were you told what to do? Was that kind of...
I was. The everything was written, and what I would do sometimes is the bass lines were so very melodic, so it was a three-way interweaving of melodies also, which gave it quite a characteristic charm, as you say. You know, so but no, really strictly I would stuff lyrics into those melodies you know, and make them work. But I think Tim really liked working with the ideas of opposites, and we certainly shared that. And you know, and in my lyrics I talked a lot about opposites as well, you know, and colliding them and creating something new. So, you know, we were together also for a reason, you know, and that we shared a lot, but expressed them, you know, expressed ourselves in different, you know, areas within the same project, you know. So it's definitely a co-creation here, but it was very separated, you know.
And as the writer of the lyrics, did you also come up with the song titles? And because they are a big part of the aesthetic,
Sometimes,
I think, and they're very evocative.
Yeah, sometimes I could get one in, yeah.
So I can see how you, it must have been really liberating when you started Monad with Rosie from Pram.
Yeah, it was, Monad was like my playground, you know, because of course, you know, for me, Tim was the great songwriter, and I was totally inexperienced. I couldn't even play an instrument, you know, so I needed to start with the babies in the sand and in the playground. And I guess Monad for me was, it was a very, because also with Stereolab albums, well, there were some kind of expectations put on us, you know. So, and Monad was like, well, you know, nobody cares, and I can do whatever I want at the pace that I want, and it has to come from a real desire to do it and a real my own timing in doing so. There's no pressure for me to do that. So yeah, it was liberating, and yeah, and I could do whatever I wanted, and it was so exciting for me to, like anyone who records, you know, who writes their songs and goes and record them with a bunch of friends. It's like the days go by like that, and you have so much joy in creating. You know, it's a lot of fun. So I wanted to taste that, because with Stereolab it wasn't necessarily fun.
I wanted to ask you about that. When you Monad ended up being your personal project, but you started it with Rosie from Pram at the start?
No, I didn't start it with her.
Okay.
I started it with me, and actually I was I was going to start it with Morgan, you know, Morgan Lott, who played keyboards in Stereolab for a while. But when we met up with Morgan to work, Catherine left the band quite suddenly. So we were looking for a keyboard player, and she said, I'll do it. She said, I can't play, but give me 1 month. I'm going to learn, and I'll do it, which she did. And so there, my buddy that I was going to start this band with fell off the cliff for joining Stereolab. So I did it on my own, and of course I included Mary. She was there in the beginning, and my boyfriend at the time. So just including, but the first recordings that I've done was with Rosie Cuxton from Pram in Birmingham.
But my question was because back then I wondered about that community or scene around the Too Pure label that felt so incredible from where I was. I was living in Mallorca, isolated from the world, and just reading magazines when they arrived. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like London must have been the best place. Of course, idealized, but it must have been amazing because Moonshake and Pram and Stereolab and Monad and even the first early PJ Harvey. It was like, what's happening there? What was it like that those early days at Too Pure? To me, they sound like every day there was something new and different and exciting.
Yeah, it's true. There weren't enough days in the week to have all these gigs, to go to all these gigs that were happening everywhere. Yeah, it was a really extraordinary time. Of course, we didn't know it at the time because we were economic crisis, you know, blah, 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 blah. but it was thriving with music, and we would all go to each other's gigs. There was a lot of support. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of energy. People would put energy into it, and there was the idea of screw the man, screw mm-hmm. the big corporations, screw, DIY, do it yourself, do it independently, and create communities. And
it was kind of the opposite to Britpop.
Yeah, but Britpop was a big construct, actually, from the media, and the media work for the men, mm-hmm. So they work for the corporations, sadly. But see, at the time also there was a lot of fanzines and it was just so active, and it was people took matters into their own hands, and really you did it because it was exciting and it brought about meaning in your life and other people, and it made sense. It wasn't, of course, there's always people who want to make it to the top. There were, of course, some people like that, but rarely did those people actually make it, and it was, I wasn't there I moved to London in 1989, so I missed the 80s, where also there was a lot of energy in cities, British cities, not just London, Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds, Glasgow, Edinburgh. They had all their punk and post-punk scenes that were, I think it must have been quite exciting. But then Thatcher came along, and so that brought about a different twist on the situation. And maybe, yes, some people really believed in this kind of, individualism. There's no such thing as society. There's no alternative. The capitalist way is the only way. All the ideology started to settle in, and I think Too Pure was a bit of a, I don't know, I hope I'm wrong when I say that, but the way I saw it, Too Pure was quite an example of that. They started small, two guys crazy about music. One really completely crazy about, the other one was more entrepreneurial, but that's good when you do a label. And then they became the kind of monster that they became. Of course, they had Mouse on Mars, PJ Harvey, Pram, Stereolab, and other good bands. And then they sold. They got bought, mm-hmm. And that's bad. That's when independence goes down the drain. And another thing that I clearly observed at the time was Nirvana. So mm-hmm. Nirvana, grunge, and massive world phenomenon, Nirvana, that made so much money. And then it was like the major labels were like, so you can make money with those little guys, that go in their garages. And we kind of profited a bit from that situation, because we got signed to a major record company. We left Too Pure, but by then Too Pure had become a bit more dictatorial. It's like, okay, now generic sleeve for everybody. Oh, really?
What?
Are you sure? And it's like, but no, you give us no money and we can't have our own sleeves. So, there's a problem there. So I guess it's just kind of ego stuff, Yeah. So at some point there were 6 of us in a band, and we were a touring band, and we couldn't afford to have people have jobs and and then leave the jobs to come on tour with us. So it's like, okay, let's see.
Talk about being a touring band. You come back with Stereolab. Of course, in 2020 you had to cancel the tour or postpone the tour, but you played last year at Primavera Sound, among other places.
Yeah.
You didn't like the experience?
See, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's ridiculous, to be honest. But of course, I'm going to get shouted at for saying things. But there's just so much at Primavera. Like, why do we need this overabundance of, uber consumerism of bands, and a lot of them are fucking good things that I actually want to see, but there's not even time.
Yeah, they play at the same time.
No, I just disagree with that format, me completely. It's not right, like make it at least possible that we can see the bands and not have to run around. I mean, I know people who didn't even eat. They could not stop to eat because, and it's their kids. Two parents went with their kid, and the kids were like, okay, we're doing this. And they ran around for a whole weekend. They didn't even have time to eat. No, I think it's wrong. It's wrong,
Maybe because of that, you were going to do a tour, venue tour, a headline tour.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
When and why did you decide to reform?
We decided to reform because our records with Elektra, we did 7 albums with Elektra. They got so Elektra Records was a major record company that was owned by Warner,
mm-hmm.
and then that disappeared. I don't know, 10 years ago. I'm not even sure when it disappeared. 15 years ago. And basically, was it Warner? Warner then ended up sitting on a huge amount of records that, I mean, we're not a priority for Warner. We're not like, big bucks. So our albums were not, being re-released or, reworked. So anyway, there was an initiative for smaller groups like these who were stuck under a pile of other artists and bigger albums to be released out of their contract with those big major companies and be bought by smaller independent labels. And voila, and the negotiations took years, but finally it happened, and our catalog with Elektra got bought by Warped Records, which of course is much better situation for us because we know these people and they know the value of making a good record, a good sounding thing, a thing that you're happy to open so that's what happened, and Tim agreed to get back together. So that was 11 years later, and everybody was keen, really. Andy and Joe and Chabi, who joined the band.
Yeah, I was gonna tell everyone who may not know that you have a Spanish bass player now.
Yes, we do, and he sings.
And you brought him into the band because he was your bass player in your solo project.
Yeah.
How did you come to meet him, and why did he start playing with you?
Well, he's a good friend of José Luis Cuevas, who José Luis contacted me. José Luis and Eduardo, who run Born
Music.
Yes, Born Music. So they're touring agent. That's how I came through Puerto de Santa Maria in 2011. In fact, that's when I discovered Spain. Jose Luis and Eduardo organized a tour of 10 shows around Spain. And I was solo at the time. And I was a bit inexperienced, I must say. So it was good for building my experience, my playing experience.
Was that a very big challenge for you to from being told what to do in a band, and then of course after an evolution and after many years of playing and touring and doing your solo projects, but then being alone on a stage, was that very challenging? Were you very nervous before you went on stage on that?
Yeah, it was super challenging because I was not experienced, but I felt if I don't put myself through this, I'll never do it, you know. And I'm not the type who's going to rehearse in my bedroom for hours and hours and hours. I mean, I've done it more since I understand the benefits, of course, of rehearsing alone. But you know, when you're on stage, it's different. You get sweaty hands, and your brain just goes out the window, and you know, and your knees may tremble, you know, and then you're faced with people who are facing you, and it's a completely different experience, and that you need to practice in situ, and you know, and I think that's also my bad schooling, you know, the Tim Gaines School of Rock, whereby we just didn't rehearse. You know, I mean, we rehearsed a little bit, but you know, the first shows were like, whoa. I would say the first 10 shows were like, whoa, okay, we're still learning, and then okay, off we went. You know, so yeah, there was a bad rehearsing ethics there. You know, with some people, I mean, they rehearse to death, they film themselves, you know, so they know how to position themselves. Oh yeah, no, there it looked bad, you know. Oh, so I correct that. I mean, there was none of that. We're just really, you know, a bit careless in that sense. And I guess it's kind of the bit punk rock, you know, arrogance of just go out there and do it, you know, and learn as you do it, you know. Which, I mean, I kind of like that, you know. I kind of like that. But it's true, sometimes you're going to present.
I think I always say that that is the punk rock ethic, even if the sound is not punk rock, but all that comes from the punk rock DIY ethic.
Yeah.
I wondered, why have you changed the name from Monad to Source Ensemble to Laetitia Sadier, just like a solo, being at the bottom it is the same project, it's you and your songs. Why the change of names of projects?
Well, because in 2009 I was with a man that I loved very dearly, and he didn't understand why I'd called my band Monad. Like, to him, it's like, you know, this is obscure. Well, he didn't know much. I kind of introduced him to the world of underground indie pop music, you know. But he didn't understand the punk rock attitude, you know. He was quite a bit older than I was at the time, and so he said, "Why don't you just call yourself Laetitia Sadier?" You know, like traditional.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt maybe it was, you know, I felt that my little playground era, maybe it was time to leave that and to become me. And
you put the Source Ensemble as a way of putting it as a kind of a band name?
That came later, because I was playing with Emma and Chabi, and then Nina joined the band, and it really felt like, well, you know, this is not Laetitia Sadier, this is a band, you know. So I was attempting to revert back to the idea of a band because, you know, I wasn't. So voila. So I know, I mean, I still play sometimes solo, and that's Laetitia Sadier, and with my band, it was Laetitia Sadier Source Ensemble, we're together, we're band.
Okay, so you still do this every time you play with a band. It's Laetitia Sadier Source Ensemble.
Well, I don't know. I haven't played with my band for a while now.
Of course you haven't.
So, but hopefully, yes, in the future, yes.
I wonder what are your plans, if you can make any plans these days. But what is in the pipeline?
The usual. Well, I'm working on an album, and I've been working on this album for a while now. So it's going very slowly, but I'm liking it, and it seems I have still a bit of time to finish it, as you know, as I see fit. So it's good. There's no pressure, and you know, apparently from March 2022, you know, we'll be able to tour again.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of looking like, possibly. So yeah, just trying to.
You will have a Stereolab tour sometime in maybe late 2021 or early 2022, I suppose. So now that Stereolab are touring, where are you going to try to fit your album and your own tour? Will it happen after you know exactly what Stereolab is going to do, or?
Yeah, with Stereolab, we were supposed to tour in Europe properly and come back to Spain properly, and France and Germany. So we were supposed to do that in October, November, for 6 weeks, and go to Italy as well. And okay, so we canceled that. We were supposed to tour in America in May, and then October do this big European tour. And then we were going to have that was my dream, okay, is that we curate our own festival. Mm-hmm. And so we were going to do that on the 27th. Oh my God, next week we were going to do our own festival at the South Bank in London, mm-hmm. Which has the Queen Elizabeth Hall, the Purcell Rooms, and the Royal something. So
who was going to be there?
We were going to have Sean O'Hagan, Julien Gasque, and Mouse on Mars, and Manuela, band from half German, half.
The guy from France Ferdinand.
Yes, yeah, you know the Knicks, yeah. Wow, I'm glad you know. I really love them. Yeah. We're gonna have I can't remember like this on the top of my head.
No, but that's a good lineup already.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And we were gonna have a disco until 4 a.m. in the morning. Dance the night away. So excited. With the best possible music. And yes, so that would be next week. And that would be the end of this, you know, reunion tour, and you know,
mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a one-off reunion tour, to do this tour in America, in Europe, then the final party, and everyone back to what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that was the idea. Yeah, mm-hmm. And so I guess I guess it feels like unfinished now, and that whenever we can, we would like. And the American tour was going to be really beautiful as well, playing really, really amazing venues. Mm-hmm. So, but we'll see in a year's time also, what is still open, what is still possible, what needs, what new things also emerge. We'll see.
There is one question I've always wondered about touring and Stereolab specifically, is that you travel with very vintage equipment. And I don't know if you ever had problems with that equipment arriving into a venue and not being in the best shape.
How many times did we go, quick, we need a doctor for the Farfisa, we need a doctor for the Vox organ. And then we bought this Jupiter, really fantastic Jupiter, was it 4 or 6? I don't know, but fantastic sounding organ. And the guy said, don't take it out on the road. Yeah, okay, we won't. And of course we did, and I don't know, it lasted 2 weeks, and then went, so yeah, I mean, what's vintage, our guitars are kind of, on the older side. And but yeah, no, we don't do Farfisas anymore.
So now you travel with you use the simulators that
I don't.
And actually, they're inspired in your song titles, most of them.
Possibly, yeah, but I think it works in the scheme of things. It's not like, oh my God, this sounds terrible compared to the original. Best to have the original, but if they break down all the time, then and they're out of tune while you play them, no.
And being such a progressive band, it doesn't suit you to be purists, to be honest. So I understand the aesthetics of using vintage equipment, but at the same time, I think it's a forward thinking. You are forward thinking people, so in a sense, you need to make the most of it all. I have one, maybe not the last question. I don't know if it will be the last, but one of the last questions to wrap up the conversation is, you've been in music for a good 30 years now. Would you select, what's the most important moment for you in your music career? If you think there is one moment that you can think, this is where everything changed, or what I remember more dearly.
What important, or I don't know. There were some strong moments, certainly. I don't know, many of them, and I don't know what kind of how to.
Or put it in. Let's tell me the 30 years in 4 steps.
In 4 steps.
Yeah. I mean, you've been in music for 30 years. I would think the first step would be moving to London. But you need to give me the other 3. Yeah,
I think Emperor Tomato Ketchup marked another era, a turning point to a music that was, I think, more sophisticated and intricate.
So you would say that before Emperor Tomato Ketchup, you were more like simpler, and then after that it was more, everything was more sophisticated.
Yeah, I felt that there was a turning point. Then in '96 we deciding to do my own songs, and I feel really this. I mean, this prolongation, of that act, and of course. And then we had, a number of tragedies in the band. Of course, losing Mary was, the biggest.
I did not want to go into that, if you think.
But that did mark us, I think, you know.
Of course.
And me moving back to France and then coming back to London 5 years later, and and of course getting back together, playing this music, and I think I don't know if there will be a new album. That really I can't tell you, but at least being able to play the songs together again. Well, now it's all upheld in the air, but I guess bringing a sense of closure also that would be nice sometime in the future.
How does it feel playing those songs again now that you are a way more experienced musician?
Well, I think we were a better band this time around. I really think so, because also there's only 5 of us now. For me, the 6th person was always one too many.
Why was that?
Because the level of sound on stage and the complexity just could not be translated, successfully. When there's too much information, the PA will not translate that. The listeners will not hear it. Mm-hmm. So I felt, and also there is always an insecurity as what's my role, whereas here being 5, it's like, this is my role, this is your role, and it all comes together. And therefore we're much more focused on our roles, and we can't lean on someone like that. No, this is what you do. So I felt there was much more power also, because everything's much sharper and in focus. So to me, it was more fun, really, more responsibility as well. Like, oh, you can't fuck up. You're really important now,
Yeah. Have you? I bet you have. But have you noticed the love and the admiration of so many people for what you've done? I mean, you're going to be very proud of that.
It's fantastic, and very moving. Yes, that people were there, And Joe had a little calculation that on that tour last year, we probably played to 500,000 people, 500,000 people.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is a lot of people, actually. It's a lot. And
so we started talking about politics at the start of the conversation. And I think I told you earlier that we decided when we knew that we couldn't do a festival, we decided to turn it into a TV show. And the TV show, of course, there's a lot of live shows and music and people playing live on streaming. But in between shows, there's a few people, including myself, being silly and saying things like the one I'm going to say today. Do you think that it was in your fate to be a political person because you were born on May 1968?
Well, of course I tend to think so. But there's other people who were born in this May 68 or in May 68 who don't care about politics. So.
And my last question, because I didn't know about that, and I'm very curious about why were your family living in America?
Because my dad worked for IBM, International Business Machine. Mm-hmm. So he was always traveling, and sometimes he would take us with him, if it was more than 3 months assignments, the family would go. So we went to America a number of times, actually. And the most significant time was to stay 2 years, and I was 10 to 12 years old. And
You attended the French lycée there, or did you go to American school?
Although I went to American school in the morning and French school in the afternoon. So I got double schooling for a while, for 2 years. And we traveled also. We took 2 big trips in a camper van. And that was, for me, like traveling through America as a 10, 11-year-old, it was like, wow, it's so big, everything's so big. and I felt quite comfortable with that, with the bigness of it. It was mesmerizing.
You were meant to be political and you were meant to be on tour.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we're out of time already.
Okay.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope we will resume this conversation when you come to Puerto de Santa Maria one day, not too late.
I would like that.
Soon.
Well, I would like to come to Spain actually for a month or 2 in January or February. I want to learn Spanish, and I want to be in Spain and see how I like it, and
I'm sure Jose Luis and Eduardo, who are probably watching, can do something about it. So, Jose Luis,
yeah,
Eduardo,
they know.
you want to come to Spain in January or February. Thank you very much, Laetitia.
Very nice.
It's been a real pleasure. And everybody else, this is the end for now of our professional conferences. But remember, at 6 p.m., we have Sherry and Damien Krukowski from Galaxy 500, among many other things that he does, talking about streaming and the politics of streaming. So I tell you to please join us at 6 p.m. Well, thanks, Laetitia. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hasta luego.
Bye-bye. Hasta luego.